How will we power our future? Can we create a healthy and clean economy? Climate One at the Commonwealth Club is at the forefront of the global debate about energy, economy, and the environment. Bringing together the brightest and most provocative leaders of our time, Climate One is the place where big ideas get heard. With thoughtful and insightful discussions on policy, business, science, and culture, Climate One founder Greg Dalton gets to the heart of the matter. It's our future. It's time to come together.
Today on Climate One, we sit down with science educator and TV host Bill Nye and filmmaker Jason Sussberg. We'll discuss their collaboration on Bill Nye, Science Guy, a documentary detailing Nye's pivot from beloved children's show host to climate change authority.
What Bill Nye just did was waste everyone's time explaining that CO2 is rising. Bill Nye is just going around saying CO2 is up, therefore global warming is dangerous, we should be concerned. It's not. It's not dangerous.
The world is getting warmer. It's continually getting warmer.
If I'm right, the reversals will lead to a degree and a half cooling. If you're right, they're not. But what are we worried about right now?
Okay.
We have this increasing anti-science movement in the United States.
Our president is worried about global warming. What a ridiculous situation.
All right, that was Donald Trump calling out President Obama. It seems our command...
There's something of an anti-science movement in this country, and you talk about that in the film. Bill Nye, why has that movement, that effort, been so effective in this country?
My understanding is the fossil fuel industry has been very successful at introducing the idea that plus or minus 2% is somehow the same as plus or minus 100%. That scientific uncertainty is the same as doubt about the whole thing. And that's not accurate, but it is, I think, writ large, the fossil fuel industry. So, Jason Sussberg, let me ask you this. Why did you cut out the check? So I made a bet. I proposed a bet to Mark Morano, the guy that's in there. And that's the same guy that was in Swift Boat, right? He hired actors to pretend to be Vietnam vets. God. And then Joe Bastardi, I offered them each a bet of $10,000 twice, that 2016 would be the hottest year on record, and that 2010, 2020 would be the hottest decade on record, and I had big check printed. Do you know where you get a big check? From a company called bigcheck.com. And it's no big deal, but anyway, you cut it out right there.
Yeah, we did cut it out. We had, a documentary can only be so much, and so we had 100 minutes, and we figured it was a sober portrait of you challenging these guys, and that was, we left it in, but it was a little silly. So It lives on the internet, but in the film, we kept it a little sober.
Can't have anything silly with a movie about Bill Nye.
No, but
good point.
So you get the check printed, and neither one of them would take the bet. And it looks like 2017 will be the hottest year, actually. People thought with El Nino cooling off that it wouldn't be as hot, but I guess thanks to the fires, 2017 will just eke out 2016. Way to go, 2017.
Bill Nye, what have you felt in terms of the denial machine coming after you, attacks for, it must be old hat by now.
Climate deniers have a lot of trouble with me, yeah. But what are you going to do? You got to fight the fight. You guys, this is the only problem we've got is climate change. We've just got to address this. And the opportunities are huge. They're huge. But we got to get started.
One of the points made in the film is changing the narrative. And as you know, the tobacco companies in the 50s said, we're not sure. They doubted science, famously said, doubt is our product. That was then picked up by the oil companies. And lately, it's kind of the NFL saying, we're not so sure. What do you see as the thread between those narratives and the importance of changing that denial narrative?
Well, the word thread is good because the fossil fuel industry hired the same guys from the cigarette days, the very same people. And I mean, the NFL, you're talking about concussions?
Concussions. People say we're not sure that what causes CTE, and there's lots of people out there still playing football when the science is emerging that's pretty dangerous.
But I just feel the scale of climate change and the scale of cigarettes is way bigger than head trauma. And when I played soccer, I played center midfield in high school. It was a point of honor to head the ball. You know, the guy, we had this goalie who could kick it half the field, Rick Eifler, and you wanted to be, to head it to show how cool you were. And look, I'm fine. Maybe I messed up. We'll see. So anyway, the thread is that denial or doubt is their friend. I mean, it does work. It is very effective. And I think of Frank Luntz. Is that his first name?
Polster.
Right.
What's his name?
Polster Group, yeah.
Yeah, Frank Luntz.
Yeah. How does he have a gig? How does he get a job? He's the guy that told the Republican Party, doubt is your friend, doubt is your friend. I mean, I don't know if you're out there, Mr. Luntz, but you kind of left the world worse than you found it. I know you were making a living, but for crying out loud. So I think what's going to happen as people come of age, and my claim is that climate deniers are almost universally older. That is to say, baby boomers and up. And when those guys and gals age out, can I use that term? Then scientifically literate people will emerge and get to work on climate change very quickly. I mean, really fast. I think the pendulum will swing back really fast. I think when you have somebody saying there are more people at this inauguration than there were at the other one, no, there weren't. Like, that's not going to be sustainable is a modern word. That just won't last. But the question that I think about continually every hour of every day is, how is it going to happen in time? Where will the curves cross? Will the deniers get aged out fast enough for the climate change embracers, let's do something abouters, to emerge?
Coming up next on Climate One, our discussion continues with science educator Bill Nye and filmmaker Jason Sussberg. Let's talk about solutions. There's a lot of debate. People think it's so big, what can I do that matters? Individual action. Does individual action matter, or is it like writing a check to the federal government to pay down the national debt?
My claim is if everybody were talking about climate change, if we were talking about climate change the way we talk about what happened in Charlottesville or what happened in Texas, people would be doing something about it. If we were talking about it just every day. Yes, recycle your water bottle. Don't squander water bottles. Don't squander water. Don't leave the lights on. Don't take unnecessary car trips that you don't need to take. Yes, yes, yes. Put in double pane, triple pane windows. Yes, yes, yes. But if we were talking about it the way we talk about these other issues, we'd be getting her done. And the evidence for this I present to you comes from my parents, and they're mentioned in the film. During World War II, everybody was talking about World War II. That's all they were talking about. The music, the food, everything was about winning the war. And so if we had that same idea about climate change, or from my own lifetime, the Apollo program, we're going to beat these other guys to the moon, and that will somehow achieve something. And it did, and the former Soviet Union went out of business, most of it. Some of it's still going. We would be getting her done.
But that greatest generation believed in that collective sacrifice in a way that Jason Sussberg, the millennial generation that you're part of, one of the critiques of that generation is that they want all their convenience. They want the food delivered to them. They don't do sacrifice. They think that clicking on an icon on Facebook, that's activism. So tackle that in terms of his...
Okay, I'm going to be the voice of my generation. Is
there
that
you
what you're
are,
asking?
yes.
I mean...
Everybody.
I mean... I just find that to be, well, first off, give us a second here. We're just emerging. This generation of millennials, we are, 20 to 35. There needs to be some time to see what happens with the millennial generation. I just find that to be old man shaking fist at sky and hand-wringing. If you want to talk, baby boomers have caused all the problems. So if we're impatient...
We actually did an entire Climate One podcast on a generation of sociopaths, and there's a book out there, trashing the boomers for what they've done.
Well, yeah.
Very reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I think that our generation, and Bill was absolutely instrumental in getting a lot of millennials to take science seriously. We are going to be, as Bill says, captains of industry one day. We are going to be elected leaders. And when that does happen, I think it's trending in the right direction. So I'm hopeful.
Bill Nye, if someone's young, a millennial or below, wants to get into a climate change career, what kind of, you obviously speak to basic science more than applied science, thanks to the guidance you got from Carl Sagan. What kind of career paths would you say people ought to look to kind of really have an impact in their job, not just, as a consumer?
Well, so keep in mind that I'm an engineer. I mean, I went to engineering school right on. I mean, I love pure science as much as the next guy, maybe more. But I became an engineer because I like bicycles and airplanes. They're fun. But there's three things we want for everybody in the world. We want clean water, renewably produced, reliable electricity, and access to the internet, or whatever the internet comes to be called in the coming decades. With those three things, we could, I believe, provide a high quality of life for everyone on Earth. In order to provide clean water, we're going to need new technologies or better technologies for, let's say, desalinating seawater, let's say capturing, or the modern word is harvesting rainwater. But for that, we're going to need venture capitalists, we're going to need attorneys to protect intellectual property, we're going to need people to deliver the food to the people working on these things. We're going to need everybody working together. And I think we can do that because I watched what happened to my parents in World War II. They all got together and solved this global problem in 5 years or whatever it was, 4.5 years. So I think we can do that. And but in the beginning of all that is going to be technology, which comes from innovation, which comes from science. So let's go. It's going to be exciting.
Jason Sussberg, one of the interesting points in the film, I thought, is when you actually got Bill Nye to sit down and talk with Heather Berlin, who's a neuroscientist. You kind of got him on the couch with a shrink, and he talks about some of the personal things. Tell me about setting that scene up, and was it hard to get him to do it?
Well, so Bill jokingly put his finger to his head like a gun. However, that was Bill's idea, was to introduce us to Heather Berlin. Because Heather was doing a research that she stopped and now has since started again. That's called Your Brain on Fame, and
fame.
It's this
Fame
fame
is
on the
dangerous.
brain. Yeah, exactly. And the idea is that celebrity has an effect on your neurology, and so she set Bill through a battery of tests, personality
Including
tests.
IQ tests.
Yeah, which we didn't show. Not that they were bad. You have a very high IQ. But
that
we cut that out.
$3.50 will get you a Starbucks latte. Be sure to have the $3.50 though. Actually, it gets $4.50 now. Yeah, $4.50.
But Bill was a very good sport in letting us, take him through those battery of tests and also sitting through that sort of therapy. But it was sort of a trick for us as filmmakers to have her ask the questions that could really dive deep into who he is and what drives him and his motivations. But it was sort of a narrative trick to have a real neuroscientist sit across from Bill and sort of interrogate him about his ideas.
And Bill Nye, the upshot was that you always had this drive to be famous, and yet there's parts of being famous that you don't really like.
Yeah, so everybody, the filmmakers got my good friend Steve Wilson rambling, and he said, Bill's always wanted to be famous. What I've always wanted to be is influential. Okay, so the fame part I didn't really have worked out, I admit. But it does affect you. So Dr. Berlin, Heather, is a neuroscientist, and one of the relatively recent findings in neuroscience is your brain can change in a way that's it's changed enough you can see it on an MRI, a magnetic resonance image. And it's been shown that talk therapy, sitting and chatting it up with a psychiatrist or whatever it would be, can change your brain over the course of a year or two. So I think that's part of her interest. They love their MRIs because it's only in recent times that you could, Sigmund Freud didn't have access to magnetic resonance images. So I think that's part of what's in the background. And she did get me talking. It does. That's the one part of the movie I just want to kill myself.
When Climate One returns, Bill Nye shares with us what he thinks about selfies and how to be prepared before taking one. We've had a lot of fires, a lot of hurricanes recently. Starting with the fires, what is the climate connection with the fires in America?
Oh, so it was big rainfall in the spring. Then it got really dry and super hot in the summer. So when things started burning, there was a lot of fuel. And man, how many people were not affected by the fires? Yeah, everybody was affected by the fires. Everybody either had their lives destroyed, or somebody who had his life or her life destroyed. You guys, let's get to work on this problem. Come on, let's go.
And Hurricane Harvey, Irma, Maria.
Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. So there's everything all at once. There's, it's never, as we say in airplane crashes, it's never any one thing. So Houston has all this hardscape, huge, fastest growing large city in the U.S., maybe in the Western Hemisphere or some crazy statistic like that. And so there's all this asphalt, so-called sealed roads, waterproof roads. And when it rained and stayed there, the problem just got worse and worse and worse. So my understanding is after Hurricane Katrina, people's houses were flooded and ruined and they lost everything. And if someone had gone to those people, they interviewed people and said, okay, here's half the value of your house and everything you own. Would you abandon your house? Everybody said, yeah. But after it drains and there is no relief and you can't sell it, nobody wants to buy your soaked up house, you just stay. So then the problem happens again. And I wonder all the time, is there going to be a future people just start leaving Houston, Corpus Christi, Pensacola, Miami Beach? Those are two different cities. Just start leaving. And then is somebody going to go, New Orleans, is somebody going to go in there and try to salvage all the copper plumbing and wire? I mean, is there going to be a salvage business we haven't even thought of yet? Wow. So it's the speed that's the problem. Let's get to work.
And so that's really dark. How do you stay motivated? Try to like.
Oh, because man. So, who is from Iowa? Anyone from Iowa?
No hands.
Iowa gets 25% of its electricity from the wind, competing head to head with oil and gas. A friend of mine lives in Coweta, Oklahoma, Broken Arrow, Tulsa, suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They have earthquakes. They don't like earthquakes. And it's from fracking. It's just like nobody thought you could frack to the extent that you'd have earthquakes, like magnitude 5, like real things. And nobody wants that. And then Texas, in the springtime, gets 10% of its electricity from the wind. Now, I'm not saying the wind is the whole answer, but it just shows you what's possible. Come on, man, let's go. This will be cool. Let's make changes. Oh, the other thing, young people, transmission lines, better electric power lines. I mean, what we have doesn't suck, but we can do way better, I'm sure of it.
Aren't we worried about our education system not cultivating science literacy for the next generation?
If I were king of the forest. We want science every day in every grade, from preschool through senior and high school. Science every day in every grade. And if you're a teacher, thank you, sure, yes, wow, brilliant. If you're a teacher and you're uncomfortable teaching science, just get comfortable because kids love it. Blow stuff up. It's fun. And it doesn't mean you have to do science for 6 hours every day. Just do a little science. Every kindergarten class, a little science in fourth grade. Kids love it. It's fun for you. And the big thing we want to get everybody is not the facts of science. Yes, it's great. I met a kid the other day that memorized the periodic table, knows every number and name of element, alphabetical order or in numerical order. But what we want is for people to learn the process, to think critically. Like, is this reasonable? Is what I'm being told or what I'm reading online reasonable? If we could learn that skill, we could change the world.
We have some educators in the audience. Let's give them a round. Any educators in the audience, give them a round of applause.
Oh, so taxpayers and voters we want to fund science every day in every grade.
I'm going to ask you to each mention a noun or a person and get your first thing that comes to your mind, unfiltered, Not thinking about
Sex. Sorry.
80% of the time, that's probably true. Jason Sussberg, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt.
Clown. Wrong.
Bill Nye, Science Educator Carl Sagan.
Brilliant.
Jason Sussberg, The Creation Museum.
Terrifying.
Troubling. Yeah.
Bill Nye, Model and Entrepreneur Carly Kloss.
Oh, she's cool. Cool.
She's also on.
She's lovely. She's cool.
And she's a correspondent on your Netflix show. Bill Nye, President Trump's science advisor.
Who is it?
Lost.
He has not appointed one yet. Okay, this is true or false. Jason Sussberg, true or false? You know how to tie a bow tie.
After this film, yes.
You learned something. True or false? Bill Nye, you started doing stand-up comedy after winning a Steve Martin look-alike contest in 1978.
True.
Everybody want to get small. Okay.
No, it was that era. I had the era and so you guys, I met him eventually. It was cool. It was really a cool evening.
To see that photo. True or false? Jason Sussberg, it took weeks of hard work to come up with the film title Bill Nye, Science Guy.
True. Not kidding. We went back and forth.
True or false? Bill Nye, many opponents of nuclear power do not ground their opposition in knowledge of the science.
If that's a true or false, I guess that's true. But the problem that the nuclear industry has had is nobody wants it. That's the biggest drawback. Nobody wants a nuclear power plant around. And just objectively, everybody shoot the messenger or whatever, but this idea that you have waste products that are dangerous for 10,000 years, 10 Roman empires, some people just think that's a little irresponsible to be burying that someplace.
Jason Sussberg, true or false? Science is more political now than it ever has been.
I would say true, but I'm not. What do you think, Bill?
Well, here's what we like to say. Science has always been political. What you want is not to have it partisan. So something to think about. Going to the moon was an investment to win a unspoken Cold War, right? And it was nominally effective. Where do you invest in basic research? Without investment in the Department of Defense, you wouldn't have the internet. Without investment in space, you wouldn't have the internet. And look what the internet does. A paper check.
True or false, Bill Nye, you believe in climate change.
You don't get to believe in it. It's
not a belief.
It's a thing. It's a real thing.
True or false, Bill Nye, after this show, you will go with me up to the roof and throw a watermelon off the roof of this building.
I don't think that's true.
Oh.
But I'm open-minded if you really want to do it. And you have a permit or somebody on the ground to keep from knocking somebody on the head or crushing a car. So another thing that happened to me in college, and I did not do this, but a guy threw a water balloon off the 9th floor of this building, and it, boom, dented the roof of a Volkswagen Bug.
Wow.
In other words, this old saying, you can stop a locomotive with a mosquito if it's going fast enough. So don't get hit with a watermelon thrown from the 9th floor.
We won't do that.
Only get that once, I think.
That was one of the most popular shows was that gravity show. Jason Sussberg, true or false? Climate deniers should be ignored.
False.
Bill Nye, true or false? Facts rarely change people's minds about deeply held views.
That's false. It just takes a while.
Last question, true or false? Bill Nye, selfies cause brain damage.
Wouldn't be surprised. If you're going to take a selfie, have the camera facing the right way. Have the memory not full. Have the battery. There's a famous picture it broke the internet where it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, me, and this other guy, Barack Obama. And Neil takes this thing freaking seriously. There's no way I was going to ask the President of the United States for a freaking selfie. That was not going to freaking happen. But Neil could do it. He could do it because of his manner and so on. So Neil's getting this thing lined up. And he's thinking deep thoughts, and he wants to have the right artwork in the background, and he's got this thing going. And he takes out his phone, and the memory's full. So I took that picture. I did that. And held it above your eyes, just a little above your eyes. Otherwise, it looks like you're asleep. All right. So when people can't do it, grown-ups with phones, oh. Oh, Jesus.
You ought to have a license.
I love you all.